go lower than I ever really thought she could. Face down, the top of your booty jiggling out your jeans, baby. Pull your pants up. I like it when I see you do it better than I've ever seen it done before. A lot of women dropping to the ground, but how low can you go? Lower than your mama's ever seen it in a lifetime. Never would have imagined it, not even in her right mind. Practice in front of that mirror, now you doing it on the dance floor. Man, cause I can't get with your chick, just show me how to dance. I may not wanna get low, so I'm posted up, kinda like a player do. But if you come to the crib, then I might show you girls a thing or two. Yeah, I think you a superstar. With an ass like that, you gotta blow. Before you make it big, there's just one thing that I gotta know.
Be advised, this is going to be cool as hell.
Sunset Overdrive, Insomniac Games' 2014 Expo launch exclusive, unceremoniously made its way to PC recently, and holy mother of hot shit, it's good! As someone who pretty much exclusively plays games on the PC and is never likely to buy another console, it's always been really disappointing to see so many brilliantly talented studios making amazing looking console exclusives that almost never make their way to PC. Recently though, Microsoft have been releasing new games and previous exclusives on both Xbox and Windows 10, which should be a good thing, but with the exception of Recore and Quantum Break, which no one cares about, this has been exclusively through Microsoft's Windows 10 store, which nobody likes or uses. But lo and behold, the holy Saint Gaben has descended from the heavens and bestowed upon his worthy disciples the gift of Sunset Overdrive for only $20. Yes! Insomniac Games are incredibly renowned in the gaming industry as the creators of classics such as Spyro the Dragon, Ratchet & Clank, as well as the critically acclaimed Resistance series, which looks great, but I've never played it because I don't have a fucking PlayStation! And of course, most recently, Pizza Delivery Simulator 2018.
Pizza time.
Despite me never having played an Insomniac game, I've always had a lot of respect for them as a developer for putting player enjoyment first alongside an enormous amount of creativity. Seriously, for nearly a decade these guys have been consistently getting the Ratchet & Clank series running at 60 FPS on console, despite pushback from Sony, purely because it enhances the gameplay experience for players. So naturally I was big happy when I logged into Steam and saw Sunset Overdrive on sale for only £12. £12!
That's a steal!
Now, Sunset Overdrive takes place in the colourful open world of Sunset City, where many of the population have become so addicted to Sunny D that they have become mindless soda pop zombies. You, as the player, are stuck in the middle of the apocalypse, fighting a war on three fronts between the bandit scavs, murderous robots, and the OD. Your goal is to escape the city, which is easier said than done, as on account of their monster-inducing energy drink, to save face, megacorporation Fizco has sealed off the city with robots and literal invisible walls. From here, you travel from place to place, meeting and gathering a roster of mad, zany characters to try and find a way out of the city while fighting off the OD and taking down Fizco. Original plot, it ain't, but really it's just an excuse to put you in ridiculous scenarios and poke fun at overused video game tropes. The main character is constantly winking and making self-aware comments to you throughout the game, often referencing how cool the respawn animations will be if you fail, or how their name only appears above their head in multiplayer matches. Something that is not in the PC version. I've seen some comparisons to Borderlands' style of humour, which I think is mostly due to the freeze-frame character introductions and cartoonish art style, but where Borderlands is very dialogue heavy and often snarky and mean-spirited, Sunset's comedy is way more light-hearted and tongue-in-cheek. That and a lot of the game's humour is delivered both visually and in its gameplay, which really sets it apart from most games like it. Like the character throwing the UI at the screen when you load in, or getting blackout drunk to fast travel, Sunset never misses an opportunity to use aspects of gameplay for comedic use.
Yeah, I got guns too.
Damn! But how do I know you can use them?
I'm an American?
Movement is a very important part of Sunset Overdrive. Staying on the move and maintaining momentum is imperative to staying alive and dealing damage. You can traverse Sunset City in a variety of ways. Now, you could just walk everywhere like an absolute brainlet, or you could be a fully functioning human and use your completely normal and not at all gamified feet to skateboard grind on literally any surface imaginable. You can even grind on water.
Bid me come unto thee on the water. Come.
The world design really capitalises on the movement mechanics. All the grindable surfaces like electric wires and rails intersect and work around the map in a way that reminds me of what Bioshock Infinite would have been like if it hadn't have come out on 7th generation hardware. Don't forget that many everyday objects in Sunset City, like car roofs and air vents, in fact have the same physical properties as a highly strung trampoline. You can use these to propel yourself many feet into the air so you can hang off electrical wires or ground slam so hard you break the simulation and leave a literal crack in the ground. Bear in mind that all movement is tied to Sunset Overdrive's style meter, which is a little bit trickier to get your head around. There are upgrades for your character and weapons called amps. These can be anything from a simple XP buff to launching fireballs from a melee swing. Amps are only active once you build up your style meter. Style is gained by grinding, bouncing, acrobatics, and dealing damage. Comboing these together will increase your style even more. Level 1 style gives you access to hero amps, level 2 gives you melee and weapon amps, level 3 will activate epic amps, and max style will
Go batshit crazy!
It's important to note that staying still will make your style meter drop like a stone, so you're not only going to be more vulnerable, you will also be less effective. Also, depending on which amps you use, you can change the regular ground slam into a nuke slam. Couple that with the jump slam ability you learn later on in the game, and it's stupidly effective. Not to mention that there's also wall running and air dashing to learn and master as well. Put all that together and you have an incredibly versatile set of traversal mechanics that complement the combat and tone of the game brilliantly. Speaking of combat, when it comes to facing countless hordes of orangeade monsters, you're going to need guns, and boy does this game have guns. You'll probably get a feeling that things are going to get nutso when the very first gun you're given is a Dragon's Breath blunderbuss with 2 spherical gas cans underneath it called the Flaming Compensator.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Matter of fact, this game's entire arsenal is the epitome of I didn't know I wanted this until I had it. For instance, the High Fidelity, an automatic vinyl record launcher that ricochets between enemies to deal more damage. The Tea and Teddy launcher, a rocket launcher that fires a payload of dynamite stuffed teddy bears.
I guess this was heading to Toys for Terrorists?
The acid sprinkler. If the OD are weeds, then this is one hell of a weed killer. Set that little guy off and watch it spit acid everywhere. The Dude, a literal bowling ball launcher.
The dude abides.
The Dirty Harry. Actually, just a boring revolver that's difficult to aim with a controller.
It's not good.
Roman candle machine gun. Now that's more like it. Having a large and varied roster of guns is clearly a staple of Insomniac games, and they have absolutely outdone themselves here. Genuinely, the sheer number of unique and interesting weapons is astounding.
I mean, weapons are kind of our thing, and to us they're characters in themselves. So we set the bar pretty high for ourselves going into Sunset, and we want to create the best arsenal we've ever done. And we think we did.
There's also no reloading in Sunset Overdrive, however this is balanced out by all the guns having relatively low ammo counts. This encourages you to switch weapons often. Not to mention that guns with elemental effects can be comboed with other guns to deal even more damage.
Now that's a lot of damage!
And do not for 1 second think the crazy weapons and the lack of reloading make the game a cakewalk. Oh no. Running and gunning on the ground for any length of time is going to get you swarmed, and simply grinding back and forth while picking off enemies won't work either, as ranged enemies can predict where you're going and block traversal spots with ice, acid and bombs. You want to win in combat, you got to use your whole kit. Guns, parkour, amps, the lot. Good news for you is that every single square inch of Sunset's map is designed for you to make the most out of the traversal mechanics. You're never a jump or flip away from a grind rail or a bounce pad to get your style meter back up and dealing damage. The game actively encourages you to rampage through it, giving you health and ammo pickups for killing enemies. It's kind of similar to how Doom 2016's push forward combat works, but with way more verticality and sheer fucking madness. The game has a lot of set pieces which can be fairly hit or miss. Boss battles are fantastic spectacles, always featuring some ridiculously oversized and absurd looking enemy that implements some twist on the existing traversal mechanics. Occasionally the game also puts a spin on regular mission types. A simple fetch quest becomes a literal game of fetch with a murder crazy robot dog. There's a side mission where focus group robots rate how much fun you're having by how well you kill them.
We were built with a fun sensor, and we detect things that are not fun.
And a tower defense segment in front of a LARPer's castle.
At the castle! Fire!
Not all of these set pieces hold up though. There's a flying segment early on in the game that is just straight up garbage. There's a train chase sequence which will completely fuck you over if you haven't got hit scan weapons, and a mission involving pigeons that, without spoiling anything, is in fact the most frustrating thing ever. And in case you hadn't noticed the blindingly obvious, Sunset Overdrive is utterly gorgeous. For a game that is over 4 years old, it's pretty damn impressive how well this thing holds up. The lighting in particular is excellent, and gets the most out of the game's bright and varied colour palette, as well as having some really great shine and light reflections on things like the OD skin or liquid effects. Texture work is also surprisingly great, considering the game's age and it also being a very fast open world action game. Level of detail and texture popping are the only things that are particularly weak here. However, outside of a couple very specific instances, this is something you'll barely notice 99% of the time, as you'll be focusing on what's directly in front of you and not in the distance. All that aside, animation and effect quality is what really steals the show here. The amount of distinct and inventive weapon and explosion effects is staggering. Be it the bursting pop effect from killing poppers, or the devil-faced mushroom cloud of the TNT launcher, along with countless others, the attention to detail and absolute creativity of these effects is nothing short of world class. The fact that Insomniac injected so much personality into even the smallest aspects of the game's visuals makes it more comparable to something like Cuphead, rather than any 3D game I can think of. And it would be remiss of me not to mention the brilliant and wacky respawn animations, ranging from being dropped off by a UFO or teleporting in via phone box, and so many more. There's also a ridiculously extensive list of wardrobe options, so you can customize your character to your heart's content. Wait a minute, is that a chef hat?
Fucking chef.
Waiter! Hey, waiter! There's a hair in life!
My name is Chef.
Your mileage with the game's soundtrack may vary depending on your own taste in music, but personally I found the punk and garage rock tracks really match the game's tone and pace, and they're pretty damn enjoyable in their own right. The only issues I have with the music is that it can often straight up cut between switching tracks, leaving the game eerily silent for a few seconds. A similar issue with the game audio can be seen with oddly quiet sound effects and cutscenes, but technical issues aside, the audio for most things is just as bombastic as the visuals are. Now, the biggest problems I have with the game aren't really related to the game itself, but the PC port. Settings are pretty limited for a start. There are no sliders for texture fidelity, shadow quality, or render distance, and options like ambient occlusion have only on-off options. Performance-wise, the game runs pretty well. My old i7 and 970 can manage a steady 60 FPS most of the time, even when ludicrous amounts of enemies are being rendered at the same time. Drops do happen, and they seem very random and not at all related to how much or how little is happening at any given time. This and the lack of scaling options may make the game difficult to run on lower spec systems, so be warned. Keys, thankfully, are fully rebindable, but mouse controls are awful. The game has a lot of mouse deceleration, which makes any sharp mouse movements impossible. Apparently this is going to be fixed, but until then I recommend using a controller. If the game isn't launching for you, try adding the install folder to your list of exceptions for both your antivirus and your firewall. This usually fixes the issue. Now, for whatever reason, if the in-game resolution looks like it's stuck at something like 720p, regardless of what setting you use, this can be fixed too. To fix this, go to the games.exe file, right-click, select Properties, click Change All User Settings, and then tick the box saying Disable All Full-Screen Optimizations. With this done, you should be able to render at any resolution you want. While both of these problems are fixable, this level of PC port in 2018 is lacking to say the least. In terms of bugs, I played for a good 12 hours straight without so much as a hiccup, until the player and enemy models randomly started freezing and doing weird things to the gameplay. While annoying, this issue fixed itself after restarting the game, and it hasn't happened since, so it wasn't too much of an issue. Now, despite the lousy port, Sunset Overdrive is easily the most fun I've had in a video game this year, and has been breaking out in the biggest shit-eating grin imaginable whenever I play it. The brilliant movement mechanics and the ridiculous arsenal, along with the mind-blowing art design, simply makes Sunset an absolute joy to play, and it's easily the best action game I've played since Doom 2016, and boy do I love that game. The game is so good, I would have happily paid the 2014 price for it. Seriously, it is worth every penny. The fact that the PC version is just a fraction of its original price is just even more reason for you to go out and get this game. Hopefully, the positive reception of Sunset Overdrive on Steam will clue in Insomniac that there is definitely an audience for their games on PC. And maybe, just maybe, we'll get Resistance 3 on PC. No, Sony owns the right to that shit. Go play Sunset Overdrive.